I wanted to start off by like my takeaway was just really being intentional and staying committed. One of the things that Dave mentioned, and you guys mentioned, Julie, you mentioned this too about competing with so many distractions today in our life. And this is something that I've been thinking about lately, and I've noticed that a lot of these distractions are meant for the individual. Like a lot more, everything's kind of geared towards the individual. So that seems to be pulling people away. It's not like games used to be for like, especially video games used to be like for, two or more people. A lot of the events we used to do or the products we buy were for families. Now it's all just kind of individualized. Have you guys noticed this?
Now that you sort of say it, yes. And I also like the concept. I know this is like a strange concept, but I don't know if you like Chinese food or ever go to eat Chinese food. There is something that we used to order, which is called a poo-poo platter.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay. So a poo-poo platter is like an assortment of different, like there's egg rolls on there, spare ribs, like wontons, like an assortment of food, of Chinese food that you get. And people order them like as couples or they order them as families. And so we're getting away from the poo-poo platter is what you're saying. And we need to get back to the poo-poo platters, right?
I like that analogy. That's really good.
Yeah. So
she comes up with this stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? And then 90 seconds later, that makes sense.
No, I think it's very true. And I'm not trying to be salesy here, but David and I came up with a couples goal setting journal that is different than other goal setting journals because you're doing it as a couple. Right. We also did a family goal setting journal to kind of incorporate the kids. But I think you're right. Like when you think of journaling, don't you think of like you writing your own stuff down? But why does it have to be that way? Like we need to be inviting people into being a couple or being a family more. And I think you're right, Rex. I think that as you talk about that, that's very true.
So can you just describe the couple's journal? What does that mean? You each write something in one book?
You do it together. Let me grab a copy. You do it together. Right. You come up with usually
like one of you is a scribe, David. Is that right? One of you is a scribe?
Or both of us. I mean, the idea is kind of like what we talked about, which is to keep track of what you want to improve, and keep track of where you want to go, and then you go back and you check and see whether you got there or how far you are.
How we're doing. Nice.
Yeah, well, with goals, whether they're individual or as a couple, or even from a business perspective, there's ones that are attainable, ascertainable, and there's ones that are more aspirational. So you might have the same aspirational goal on your list, on your sheet for a year, 5 years, so who knows how long. What I want to buy a new car. I want to buy a house in the mountains. I want to take my family on a trip. So that may stay on there as an aspirational goal, and you might try to see how much closer you are to it. Mm-hmm. But the ones that are more ascertainable, let's be sure to have 20 minutes a day without our phones on. Mm-hmm. Those are things
or weekly date nights.
Yeah.
Or,
whatever they might be.
Family board game nights.
Yeah.
Right. Like doing, really, really kind of getting away from the individual stuff and really coming together as a group. So, yeah. So this is a format that we just came up with where you set a specific, some specific goals, and then you talk about action steps, obstacles, and how to overcome the obstacles. And we have couples.
It takes time. It does take effort, which we think is, we've started this. Well, let's just put a bunch of blank sheets inside of there. But you know what? It takes effort. So if a relationship takes effort, setting the goals and watching the goals, and like I said, rowing in the same direction, all takes effort. So we wanted the journal to take a little bit of effort. Yeah.
Yeah. And even the smallest or biggest goals will change your behavior a little bit day by day if you're always refreshing yourself.
No question about it. If you don't lose, and if you lose track, which is very easy to do, the year goes by, we're no closer to saving for college for Joey than we were 12 months ago because we forgot about it because we had to do this and this and this and this in the meantime.
Yep.
That's in simple, but yeah. keeping them on the forefront is I think is important.
And actionable steps. People will come into my office and they'll say, I want to, lose weight, or I want to, run a marathon. And that's all great. But like, how are we going to get there?
Snickers bar while they're telling her.
Well, how are you going to get there? Like, it's going to start off with maybe a 10-minute walk, every day, and not, you're not going to get running a marathon if you've been, on the couch, not doing much for a while. So
you can walk a mile after 2 weeks or something like that. I mean, it's the ascertainment.
The longest journeys start with a single step.
I love that.
Did you come up with that, Rex?
No, I wished I was that smart, but that's an old one.
I don't think who it's from, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Excellent. It's
I
excellent.
was setting you up to see if you were going to take credit for it.
But I don't remember. I know it's I've read that before and it's always stuck with me because it's so true.
I wanted to ask you one question while Rex is thinking about his next question for you is how is your daughter doing? The one you mentioned had struggled with addictions and maybe mental health. I'm not quite sure. How is everybody doing? How are all four, but especially that one daughter?
Yeah. Parenthetically, she was in a program in Utah in the Wasatch Mountain range, and ultimately got thrown out of there. But not good.
Yeah,
I had contact with her.
Yeah. It's been a long journey with her. I will say that she's, still alive. She's one of.
Let's see, Zoe's going to be 33, so she's going to be 30 years old.
She's going to be 30 years old. She, is heavily, into several addictions. And she sometimes, lives on the street.
She's been in jail. She had a baby.
So not really well, but to be honest with you, as long as she's still alive, we have hope that maybe she can turn it around and maybe we can, be part of her world again.
For those parents, for those parents who can relate, who might be listening, what's your advice? What's your advice to parents who have a loved one?
My advice is, particularly in circumstances that most people don't experience, don't pay attention to what other people say that you should do. You do what you think is best for you and your family. There's nothing but pundits out there who say, oh, you ought to do this or you ought to do that. And their kids are off to college at Michigan and Ohio State or wherever else, and everything is fine for their kids.
Yeah.
The worst thing that that happened was somebody smoked a joint behind the gym, kind of a thing. And that's what happens with parents who have kids with mental health issues, particularly. It's always easy for other people to weigh in. And so those of us who are parents of children that do have those issues, my advice is don't listen to those people. I mean, you can hear them. If something makes sense, fine. But don't let them guide what you think is best for you and your family.
Yeah. Hey, you do your best as a parent. Yeah. And for us, we had to create, some boundaries and space with her because of her activity. And that's been really hard. And it's almost like we have lost a child without losing a child, physically. So that's been really one of the most difficult things in our lives that we've dealt with as a couple. And we're still dealing with it. Yeah. Yeah.
What does she suffer from? Is there like a mental condition or?
It started with ADHD and then oppositional defiant disorder and bipolar and borderline personality and all kinds of addiction. So it's even as a mental health professional, it's hard to say what, anxiety, depression, like you kind of name it. And she's struggled.
There was a big bucket of
bless her. We wish you all the very best.
It was oppositional from the early days.
Yeah.
And it's interesting just to sort of finish the answer or give you a parenthetical to that prior question, Liz, is that, we look back and we say, okay, maybe we could have done things differently now looking at in hindsight, through the retrospectoscope, as doctors like to say.
Retrospect.
We could have done better, but in the moment, generally we tried to do the best we could. But what we have come to find is that while we were focusing on trying to do the best we could for the one, I think Julie and I would both agree that we missed some of how that affected our other 3 daughters.
Yep.
And we've come to find out as they've grown older and been more able and willing to share that with us. But so it does affect the whole family, and being mindful of that as best as you can when you're in it.
Yep.
Is, I think, important to folks who have family with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a daughter with ADHD. It can be really challenging. And I have totally thought about how much attention can we pay to this at the cost of the other children? Because I have 4 kids also. So it is a balancing act. And I agree with taking what other people say with a grain of salt, because every situation is unique and every person is unique.
Yeah.
And because if you take what everybody's saying too, I think that can cause some depression and doubt in yourself, and going over things a million times and
it's
just wrecking yourself, and then you're no help to anybody in that situation and state. So I appreciate you guys sharing that.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Live and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.